For today's adventure, we're going to talk about for what at the time was considered the crime of the century, and not only that, the scandal of the century. We're going to talk about and visit sites associated with the White Witch Murder of Western New York. Let's get started. Cloth-eyed Marchand was the wife of Henry Marchand, a French artist and sculptor who studied under Rodin. In the early 1900s, Henry and Cloth-eyed, who was also an artist, emigrated to the United States. In 1925, the couple and their family moved to Buffalo, where Henry and his sons Paul and George were to construct dioramas for the Society of Natural Sciences, later the Buffalo Museum of Science. In the course of his work on the dioramas, Mr. Marchand worked closely with the Senecas, and he became friends with a young Seneca woman, Lila Jimerson, who modeled for him. On March 6, 1930, Marchand's youngest son Henry came home from school to their house at 576 Riley Street to find his mother sprawled across their first floor landing. At first, it was thought that Cloth-eye's death was the result of an accidental fall. But the medical examiner soon found bloody gashes, chloroform, and signs of a struggle. It was murder. So here's where the story takes a strange twist. So it turns out Lila was actually more than just a model for Henry. It turns out Lila was a lover of Henry's, much like most of the models that modeled for Henry. So what Henry figured was if he slept with his models, it was much easier for them to actually go nude for him for his sculptors. Now, it didn't take long for Lila to actually fall in love with Henry. So this means Cloth-eyed was definitely considered in the way. But Lila did not want to get her hands dirty. So how would she get rid of Cloth-eyed without getting her hands dirty? This is where the story takes a paranormal twist. So it turns out that Lila was acquaintance of a Seneca healer named Nancy Bowden. Now, Nancy Bowden had lost her husband, Sassafras Charlie, to some questionable means. Now, Lila would turn this around and use Nancy as a tool to get rid of Cloth-eyed. And this is how she did it. She had to convince Nancy that Cloth-eyed was responsible somehow for Sassafras Charlie's death. So how would she actually go about doing that? Well, this is where a Ouija board comes into play. So using a Ouija board, Lila was able to convince Nancy that Cloth-eyed was the killer. So they were using the board, and the board, supposedly under the influence of Sassafras Charlie, after questions and answers, spells out, "They killed me." When they asked who, it spelled out Cloth-eyed. Now it turns out Sassafras Charlie was also a Seneca healer. So this gave Nancy probable cause for vengeance to become the tool of destruction. So Lila convinces Nancy to go to the house on Riley Street. Nancy walks up to the door, knocks on the door, and Cloth-eyed answers the door. Cloth-eyed lets her into the house. As soon as Cloth-eye's back was turned, Nancy, using a hammer, bludgeons Cloth-eyed nearly to death. And she finishes the task using chloroform and stuffing the chloroform rag into Cloth-eye's mouth, committing the murder. So we're here at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo, New York, and we're gonna look for Cloth-eye's grave. Now, her final resting place is unmarked, but I have a good idea where it is. So let's go check it out and see if we can find it. Okay, fortune smiles. It didn't take me that long to find it. It's actually here in section 40 at Forest Lawn Cemetery. So she's to the left in this unmarked plot right next to McCulm over here. So Clothide, you were a major part of Western New York history. May you rest in peace. Now, there were two trials. In the first one, the featured trial attraction was Henry Marshall, who admitted Jimerson was one of his many lovers, too many to count, he said, including a number of Native Americans. He said it was a professional necessity to seduce Indian women because it made them more willing to pose naked for his modeling. He said his wife consented to his free love lifestyle. At a second trial 1 year later, Jimerson testified she was foolishly in love with Marchland, but was not a party to the murder. She implicated Marchland himself, saying he told her he was tired of Clothide. Jimerson was acquitted and freed. Bowen was released after pleading guilty to manslaughter and accepting a sentence of time served. And now from here, we're going to go to the scene of the crime. Let's check it out. Okay, so I was able to find the location where the murder itself took place. I was right on two things. The house is no longer there, and it was basically a lot. What I didn't count on was when I got there, there was a white vinyl fence surrounding the lot. So that tells me that it's private property. So being that it's private property, of course, I wasn't going to be able to run around that area with the camera rolling. That would have just caused some problems. I didn't want no one thinking I was casing the place or snooping around. So as a consequence, I wasn't able to show you guys the actual site of the murder. So if you go looking for it, please do know that it is indeed private property. Now, one thing that I didn't touch on in my opening narrative, at least I don't think I touched on it, was that this here was considered a witch murder. So it makes you wonder what made it a witch murder. Was Clothide herself a witch? There is nothing to actually prove or disprove that fact. So in Native American society, witchcraft is definitely frowned upon. In fact, it could get you killed. And I believe that added fuel to the fire, which helped cause Clothide's murder. You see, when Lila was setting Nancy up to commit this murder using the Ouija board, she accused Clothide of actually putting a curse through witchcraft on Nancy's husband, which caused him to die. So this added fuel to the fire. Now, when Nancy goes to the house, it is said, and I'm not sure how this was actually proven, I believe Nancy actually mentions this in her dispositions. She asks Clothide, once she's in the house, "Are you a witch?" It's never certain how Clothide was answered that, but Nancy takes the hammer right after that and bludgeons Clothide. Then, of course, she finishes the deed with the chloroform rag. So I believe that Nancy was so convinced that Clothide used witchcraft to kill her husband, it just made it easier for her to commit this murder. And that is why it's considered the witch murder of Western New York.